I became this insufferable character because all of a sudden, I realized that I'm a 0 to 1 guy. I couldn't work with big company execs because in my view, I was a very tactical person. I was a generalist. I was a jack of all. And hiring people to hire people to do the job was something I looked down upon. I'm like, why do you need process, right? Because think about it this way. When you do a deal like this, and if you are heavily bootstrapped and you are hustle mode, imagine our marketing was making its own revenue. That's how hustle and lean we were through doing conferences and events. Now, all of a sudden, you went to marketing, to investing in ads, to head of product, to CTO. You have all of this. And I'm thinking, man, I used to do all those roles. Why do we need to spend all this money? So effectively, as a bootstrap company, as a startup, you're a pirate. You stick elbows, you're pulling punches, you're getting things done, you're executing. You're a pirate. Over time, to be this IPO company, build this 100 million revenue business that eventually becomes $1 billion company, you need to transition to being a Navy. I wasn't ready to make that journey because think about my experience graduating from being that cold caller after engineering. I only ever worked at startups that never made it. None of the startups I worked at ever hit the revenue that we did. So that was my habit. That was, I guess my muscle memory is sticking elbows and poking fingers to get the job done. Hustle by any means possible. And now I started seeing these Navy people coming in from big companies and they had a certain process. And all I saw was, oh man, too much process, too many slide decks, too much written down stuff, and execution is going down, right? And I started to see, and I started to bicker and banter with them. I became insufferable, basically. And I'm gonna give you the reality. No matter how good the financial outcome for a founder is, if you've sacrificed your life and your family and you've built your identity around this company, you're going to be insufferable. It's fraught with mental health issues. And there's a saying by Osho which goes, all of our troubles, all of our worries are nothing but attachment. I was too attached. And so I ended up in one board meeting where I I just pitched firing all the execs. I pitched firing. I'm like, should fire all of them and all of this stuff. And the board director was, listen, you've had a very difficult year. You've had a very difficult year. You went from going, pandemic, growing the business, the due diligence, to then almost dying of COVID, now hiring so many people. And you just had a baby. Why don't you take a paternity leave? And in 6 months, we'll figure out a role for you. When you tell a founder that, the writing's on the wall, right? So that day I go home and I hug my wife for like 10 minutes straight. And I just weep like a little baby. I just cry, man. I cry my eyes out. And I let every emotion of the last many years just pass. And I then say, I'm sorry. I apologize for every time you needed me and I put the business first. Every family event, every vacation, every trip, every kid's activity, I put the business first. Today, the business doesn't need me and you're the only person left standing here. And despite having all that money, the journey after that was I got drunk, I became overweight, I got depressed because I felt I all of a sudden lost my tribe. I felt I wasn't good enough. I felt like an imposter. And one day, I think 6 months had passed. I got drunk, overweight, and there's a LinkedIn post I made about this that went viral. My before and after transformation, I was unrecognizable. And she comes to me.
I saw the pictures online there. We'll link up to them in builtthesell.com. They're great and not great, but they show quite a transformation.
And she looks at me and she's like, what have you done to yourself? She's like, you had a second chance after the COVID experience and you still haven't learned. If something happens to you, we're the only ones who will be holding the bag, your kids, which you have 3 of right now. She's like, the glass is half full. You're sitting here moping that you no longer get to fulfill the vision you had started. You're no longer in the company. When you're in a position to pick up and move anywhere in the world, people would die to be in this position. And so she's like, you got to pick yourself up and change a few things if you want to be able to play the long game. Life and business is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And that day, incidentally, I was having lunch with the president of Atlassian, Anu. And she told me, and this company is worth 40 billion now, one of the most valued SaaS companies. And she's been a longstanding traction speaker. So we're having lunch and she says, hey, I wanted to quit Atlassian. After 15 years of burnout, I went in to hand in my resignation and the CEO said, don't quit, take the time off you need. And so she took a sabbatical, went stargazing in Tacoma Desert, did animal rehabilitation, things that were fun for her. And she came back energized and ended up becoming the president of this $40 billion company. And she said, self-care is never selfish. It's good stewardship towards the only way you can create value in the world. Take the time off. My other mentor, Jason Lemkin, founder of SaaStr, said the same thing. Just go away for 6 months. Just take a break. And that night I couldn't sleep, right? All these things are echoing in my head. In the corner of my room, I see my Peloton bike.
Sure.
The bike had turned into a makeshift towel rack. There's so many clothes in there that was unrecognizable, right? It becomes, again, you don't even pay attention to something. It's like a chair. It's like a piece of furniture. So I remove the clothes from it and all the crap on it. And I hop on, pick the ride, pick this instructor, never forget her name, Robin Arzone. She was coming off maternity, postpartum lows, couldn't ride as well. And she was saying, I don't feel as strong. I used to be able to go as fast and at this resistance and speed. And I can't. I feel like crap. I'm coming up. I feel miserable. And then she just screams out, self-pity is toxic. You don't need that shit. One crank, one shift, one walk around the block. I can. It starts with one. And the Eye of the Tiger from the Rocky Balboa movie was playing in the background. Those 20 minutes went like 20 seconds. I felt instant connection to her because I was coming from pain, as was she. The riders were high-fiving me. The streaks were calculated. One ride turned into two turned into four. And next thing you know, combined with my wife's, the glass is always half full, turned into a ritual. Wake up, thank the good that happened in my life the day before, bang out as many push-ups to Eye of the Tiger, hop on the Peloton, and my journey to transformation happened. But the one thing that occurred to me was, it was the environment that I was in that played a big, big part, right? So you're in Silicon Valley. Everyone around you is a founder, an entrepreneur, a VC. Selling 50 some odd percent to a growth equity firm and having a cash outcome may be good for you personally, right? It like de-risks you. You came from being piss poor. It's money that you've not seen or won't see in a couple of generations. It's life-changing money. But for most people around you, it's chump change, right? Or so that is the aura of the Silicon Valley unicorn porn. And so more and more people I talk to is like, oh, why did you have to do this? You should have played the long game. You could have built a unicorn. And I'm like, I still own, me and Alex still own close to 40% of the company. We can still, but like, it was frauded upon and that was eating at me too. And that's what my wife said, like, change the environment. You're doing all this meditation, medication, fitness, diet, health, but it's like a coping mechanism to some trauma that's holding you back. And until you're in this place, because this has been your whole career working for startups in Silicon Valley, let's eject. Let's go somewhere where people think about life and work very differently. And we had a lot of families. So me and her were both refugees of the Gulf War in Kuwait. A lot of our friends had ended up moving to Dubai. Dubai is like a safe country, safe city, perfect mix of Miami meets Mumbai. And it's like Disneyland for adults. It's like the Truman Show. Nobody talks about bad news. Everything is done for you. Everything is delivered to you. Everything from your doctor to your chiro to every help you need, cook, driver, everything is taken care of for you. And it's a fraction of what you would pay in Toronto or Silicon Valley or Vancouver. So we end up moving to Dubai. And, that changed my perspective on life because nobody cares about your unicorn and nobody cares about what you do, and made new friends, rekindled with childhood friends, rekindled with a lot of cousins, a lot of relatives, and got re-energized. And in that time that I was there, I realized that, hey, man, like this American dream, we spend all our time working, right? Work maybe 60, 80 hours a week, commute an hour early, leave an hour early, come back an hour, stay an hour late, right? Pick, drop kids. And maybe you have just enough energy left after work, staying long hours at work, commuting, because you can never afford to live next to work if you're in the city. And doing all these chores. You have just enough energy to have a nice dinner on a weekend with some friends. And then Sunday is planning for the rest of the week. You take a big mortgage, right? You buy more stuff, take more loans to buy more stuff. And you have just enough money left to have a 2-week vacation a year, which you go to like an all-inclusive place and feed into this processed diet. And then what? You retire at 65 and the life expectancy is 78. You retire at 65 and you die at 78. And those 12 years...
depressed, you're Lloyd.
and those 12 years are not functional. They're not functional. So I felt like I'm fortunate at 40 to be able to live the life I wanted to live. So why feed into this rat race and try to build somebody else's definition of unicorn? Because that's what everyone knows.